One. Thank you for joining us. My name is Judith Rolls, and I'm the Senior Associate Director for Alumni and Family Engagement here at Davidson College. I am joined tonight by my colleagues Erica Shorty, who is our Associate Director for Career Networks, and Anna Watson, our Digital Events Fellow. And we are thrilled to welcome each of you to this special edition Back to School Class and Chat with a Cat program this evening, featuring Robin McKinney Walker, Davidson Class of 2001. In a moment, we'll begin our program, but before we do, I just want to share a few quick Zoom keeping announcements. First, all participants have been muted, and we ask that you please remain muted throughout the event. This will just help all of us hear our presenters one another throughout the program. If you're comfortable with it and have not already changed your Zoom name, we ask that you might consider to do so. You can rename yourself by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen and hovering your mouse over your name, and then clicking the More or the three-dot ellipsis button. If you have a Davidson class year, feel free to add that as well. This is just fun to help us let us know who is on the call. If you have questions for our presenters tonight, we encourage everyone to please use the chat feature also at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see the chat button, you may need to click the More button first. The presenters will do their best to answer as many questions when we get to the Q&A portion of our call this evening. We have also enabled our auto transcription this evening. If you'd like to enable it on your end, you can click the Show Closed Caption or CC button on your screen and subtitles should appear. Please note that the captions are not always exactly accurate, and so we appreciate your understanding. And if you do have any technical issues, please go ahead and post those in the chat as well. Our staff will be looking at that during the call. And now I'm quite excited to turn things over to my colleague, Erica.
Well, hello, everyone. I am Erica Shorty, Associate Director for Alumni Career Networks, and your co-host for the evening. So excited to have all of you here. Chat with the Cat is our newest professional development series, and career pivots is such a hot topic right now. We are so excited to have Robin McKinney Walker, class of 2001, here with us tonight. And as she explores the transformative journey of transitioning from a career in law to her current role as co-executive director of Camp Marywood. Listen, I'm not going to drag this out any longer because we are all here to hear from Robin McKinney Walker tonight. And she's going to give us some amazing insights on what her career has led her to, and hopefully give you some gems as well to how to make your very own career pivot. So we're going to jump right into it. Robin, take it away, my friend.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thank you, Judith. I'm really excited to be here with everyone. Hello, all of my Davidson friends. I know there's lots of people on here from class of 2001 and also lots of other Davidsonians, and I'm excited to share with you all my journey of making a big career change. It was a little scary, very exciting, and has been very rewarding, so I'm thrilled to be here to tell you all about it. So I wanted to start off, and instead of just telling you my resume or something like that, I thought we could walk through some of my background and some photos. So I wanted to start where the story all really began at Camp Marywood. And I was a girl from Winter Park, Florida, which is right outside of Orlando. And a good friend of mine, who's actually the girl rock climbing with me in the picture here, Rebecca Rich Gallardo, was my friend at home, and she was already going to Marywood, and her mom and my mom talked, and it was decided that I would also go to Camp Marywood. And that is where my life changed forever when I arrived in Sapphire, North Carolina at 10 years old for 2 weeks in the mountains. And I just fell in love with it. The whole atmosphere was so much fun. I loved living with all these other girls my age and playing outside and swimming in the lake and having all these adventures. And I would say that one of the most important things about camp in general, but especially at Marywood, are the outdoor adventures that you get to do. And you can see there on the left, we are rock climbing at Looking Glass in the Pisgah forest. And that was just an amazing thing for a little girl from Florida to get to do, to climb these big rocks. And we also took lots of river trips and backpacking trips and all kinds of things. And I think that that is where my early confidence was really instilled, was going on these trips and learning that even though something is scary, you can still do it and you can succeed. And it's just so exciting when you finish to look back and see that huge rock you climbed or that rapid that you paddled. Marywood is a very old camp. It started in 1919 and it's developed a lot of traditions along the way. And this middle photo is one of the ones that I was part of, which is the boating program. It takes many years to finish, and when you do, you earn a white sailor hat that's called your captain's hat. And so this is the group I was part of, the Captains of 96, and we are all still friends today and keep in touch. Um, and I think these traditions really go a long way to make you feel like you're part of a tribe and that you all believe in similar things and have similar stories, even across generations, because a lot of Marywood girls are the daughters or even granddaughters of campers. And so we share these traditions not only with each other, but, with the older generations and younger generations as well. And of course, a huge part of camp is community. And on the right there, you can see one of my favorite cabins when I was an older camper. And we just had such a great time and so many laughs and so many great moments. But I think that Marywood really gave me so much and continues to give me so much, and especially a lot of role models, women who were just a little bit ahead of me in life. And I certainly looked to them when I was choosing a college. And many of them were Davidson students. And I came to visit Davidson and I stayed with a friend from Marywood. And that is really, I think, what helped me fall in love with Davidson was, all of these connections that I had from Camp Marywood. So now we move into the Davidson years, and I arrived at Davidson in 1997. And I have to say that we had a lot of fun. And this picture on the left here, if you're a Warner Hall girl, you may recognize it. It's from Madonna, which was a really fun event that we used to have back then. Um, so there we are, all dressed up for that. I'm not quite sure what a pink t-shirt has to do with Madonna, but we'll just leave that there. But I think my Davidson years were extremely formative for me as well. I think that there's a lot of opportunity. If you're intellectually curious, then Davidson is a perfect place for you to be. There are always interesting classes to take. And I remember arriving at college and the fact that I could take art history and political science and all of these specialty courses more advanced than high school was just really exciting to me. And I dove right into it and became a history major and then a French major when I elected to study abroad. But there's so many important things that happen during your college years. And certainly one of those is the deep, deep friendships that you make. And I know that all three of the women in this picture with me in the center are on the call tonight, and I'm so grateful to you all for how you stood by me all these years and supported me in my development and growth and all the successes that we've shared along the way. So I'm so grateful to all of you. And so much personal growth happens in college, so many moments of change and challenge and overcoming things, and it's just an incredible experience, and I'm so glad I got to do that with these women. And lastly, I wanted to touch on the fact that Davidson's a community of shared values because I think that is really important too. The honor code, but also, our commitment to working hard and being intellectually honest and curious and giving your best and all of these values that we share. I think I know now, having grown up and moved away from the community, what a privilege it is to live with others who share your values, and to be able to live with the freedom that we had thanks to the honor code is a true privilege. So I'm incredibly grateful for those Davidson years that taught me so much. And at the end of my Davidson time, I decided that I was going to pursue a career in law. And so I prepared for that and went on to the next year after graduation start at the University of Florida Law School. It was a little bit of a shock because all my classes at Davidson were about 30 people max. And then first year law school, you're in a class of 100 and professors are calling on you, Socratic method, and you have to answer, in this huge group of 100 people. But law school was really exciting. It touched on things that I deeply cared about, constitutional law and um, criminal law and all these things that were so interesting to learn about why the justice system does things the way that it does. And I really enjoyed my time in law school. I learned a lot. It was challenging, but I certainly felt well prepared. And I went on to join a firm in Tampa, Florida, where I practiced insurance defense. And if you want to be a litigator and see a lot of courtroom action, you're probably going to take one of two routes. You're either going into criminal law, working for the state or public defender, or you're going into a high volume practice like insurance defense, where you're taking a lot of depositions and arguing a lot of motions. And so that's what I did for my first 2 years at the firm. Um, and I think I learned a lot while I was there, and I highly recommend going into a big law firm. I think you get great training. You work with exceptional people who are at the top of their field. And I think I have on here dedication to excellence. I think that was the thing that I really took away from my law practice was how important it is to pay attention to the details and do your very best work and make sure that what you're giving to a judge to read is your absolute best possible work product. Also, I think it taught me a lot about how to be a professional and that you should focus on how you are adding value to the organization. And if you focus on that and you're always looking for ways that you can provide more or better, I think that you will do well in certainly any of the professions. I really struggled to find a picture of me actually doing my lawyer role because, that's just not a picture taking kind of moment, but thanks to one of the local newspapers, we did have this picture here where I was. This is closer to the end of my career, and I moved on to work for the city of Tampa and then moved to a private firm where we represented local governments who had a smaller jurisdiction, and so they would hire the firm on retainer to be their city attorneys. So this is me at a red light camera hearing, and at the end of my legal career, cities were in Florida were adding red light cameras, and this was really controversial. And please don't hate on me because I know that no one wants to get tickets from red light cameras. It's no fun. But there were a lot of people who challenged the tickets, and so we would have these hearings at the city, and they the local news came one morning when a judge had gotten one of these tickets, and he had given them the heads up that he was going to this hearing and he was gonna like crush us. And so the news showed up to cover that exciting moment. But anyway, that is the legal career. But over the time that I was practicing, I think that part of me really loved it, and I was proud to be an attorney. I was excited about the work. A great thing about litigation is that you are always moving on to something new, so you kind of get deeply involved in one story, and then that one comes to an end, and you close that chapter, and then you get a new one, and then you get deeply into that. And so that's really exciting to me. But, the long hours and the billing and all of that certainly can take its toll on you. And I think I was starting to think about other options that might be possible where I was maybe up and around and out of the office some more. And so at that time, I was really involved with the Junior League of Greater Orlando. I had joined in Tampa and then transferred my membership in Orlando. And I can't say enough great things about the Junior League. I think that it is the training ground for how to run a committee and how to get things done in the nonprofit world. And it does great things to train women to go out and lead other organizations. And so I learned so much from my years at Junior League. And I started to really spend a lot of my extra time working on these Junior League projects. And I think just slowly it started to occur to me, oh, maybe I actually love nonprofit work and I want to spend all my time doing this. And maybe I should like align where I want to spend my time with this nonprofit work that I'm doing. And that could also be a career. And I had learned a bit about fundraising, and I think fundraising is a valuable skill that is needed by a lot of organizations in the world. So if you learn that as a volunteer, you can be valuable in many different capacities. And so around that time, my former summer camp, Camp Marywood, was getting ready to celebrate their 100th anniversary. And as part of that, they were looking for a development director to lead the capital campaign, to help with organizing the big reunion that was going to occur in a few years, and a couple of other projects that were going on. And so um, I was in touch with the camp and they let me know that this opportunity was available, and so I ended up going to interview and they offered me the position, and then ensued the big struggle, which I think we'll get into a little bit later, of making the decision to make that change. But ultimately I did decide that I wanted to take this leap, and so I packed up everything, moved to North Carolina, and started in April of 2015 as Camp Marywood's development director. It was such a ginormous life change. I mean, I can't even explain it in a short time how much my life was different. But all of a sudden, I was living in a little cabin in a place that felt like it was in the middle of the woods. And at night, it was crickets and stars and the wind whipping around instead of hearing cars and lights from the city. So it was a drastic change. But I started to spend a lot more time in nature, which I realized was one of my deeply held values and helped me when I was trying to figure out how to align my life with my values, and just doing a lot of hiking and exploring in the area. And about 6 months into living there, I connected with my now husband, and we met through a Marywood connection. He's a big rock climber, and we were doing some research on rock climbing on our mountain. And so we connected, and a year after we met, we got married. And so that was really exciting to me. My friends were not convinced that moving to North Carolina to the Highlands area was going to be a great place for a 30 something to meet a future husband. But, life, you never know what's in store. And so it just turned out to be the right place for me to find a person who had similar values. And that was great. So we continued doing that for about 7 years. I was the development director at Marywood, and at that time, the executive directors were getting ready to retire after 20 years. And so Frost and I talked about it a lot. We kind of deliberated and decided that we would apply for the job. And after a long, many round interview process, we were selected. And so we became the next executive directors of Camp Marywood, and that's the role that we have today. And it is so much fun. We absolutely love it. It challenges us in many ways, and I find that I use a lot of my skills from my legal practice in the day to day, because we are both running the summer camp, but also managing a nonprofit and being stewards of a large property. So there are all kinds of interesting situations that come up and things that we talk about. But that is about it. But I wanted to touch on one more thing, and that is to circle back to my Davidson friends. They've been with me walking every step of this path, and they were there when I was grappling with the decision to move, to make these big life changes. And I think that having these friends is just absolutely important to a successful and happy life. You need to spend time with friends and stay connected to them. They knew you when you were young. They watched you through all of your seasons of life. And I appreciate that despite many professional and family obligations, that we still make time to get together frequently. These are some of our trips over the years. And some of my friends, like Reed, who I know is on the call, hello, and I connected again through Marywood because her daughter is a current camper, well, current counselor now. But we see each other at mother-daughter and the different things. And then full circle, the girl who was in the climbing picture in that very first picture slide, this is Rebecca here. And so we went climbing together a few years ago in the local area, which was really cool. So these friendships from Davidson really can last a lifetime, and I would just encourage everyone to seek your friends out and stay in touch and make the effort to get together. It is so incredibly fulfilling. And that is Frost and me. the 4th of July celebration last year, and you can see just how happy we are in our element, just doing our thing with the kids. And it really is a wonderful thing to live your life feeling aligned with your purpose. So I'm excited to talk more about that, and I'm honored to have this opportunity and that so many of you all joined the call. So thank you.
Robin, this is so exciting because your journey is not a typical journey. You literally went from case law to campfires. And so before we jump into the pivot, take us back to your Davidson days. Like, who were you then, and what did you think your life and career would look like?
Well, I started out at Davidson under this strange idea that I was going to think about med school. And so I took biology and chemistry and quickly realized that that was not my path and that the liberal arts were much more my speed. And I really enjoyed my classes in poli sci and art history. And I decided I would become a history major. I thought some of those professors were the most amazing ones that I had, and still remember them today. So, yeah, big change there.
Was there a particular moment at Davidson where you're like, wow, I think I really want to pursue law right now? Like, what was that moment where you were like, okay, law is it for me?
Well, that kind of came to me over time, as I was realizing that the sciences were not my path. I took some history classes with Professor Vivian Dietz on British history, and I was really interested in this whole idea of like the Magna Carta and when people are given the opportunity to make their own rules or their own constitution, what rules do they choose and why, and all of that.
Yeah.
And so intellectually, I would say that was part of it. There's also another moment that I want to tell this story. And first, I want to preface this by saying that I'm extremely grateful to the Residence Life Office for giving me my very best friends in second canon. And you couldn't have made better matches. So I thank you so much. But we had a moment freshman year where at the very end of the year, our much loved hall counselors were going to be fired, essentially. And I don't remember all the circumstances now. I think it had to do with something with alcohol, of course, but we were all on the hall just like outraged because we loved these two women so greatly. And so we had this moment where we all ended up in a meeting together, our entire hall and the folks from Residence Life, and we were hearing about the decision and all of that. And I remember just feeling like this desire to speak up and to advocate and ask questions like, was there going to be a chance to appeal? And were they being treated the same as other people and all these things? And later on, I realized, oh, these are all the questions that you learn in law school are part of due process and everything. So, but it just kind of came out naturally in that moment. So, um, now, as an adult and a camp director who has to enforce policies, I completely sympathize with their situation. So, no bad feelings towards Residence Life, but it was a moment that kind of opened up the possibility of advocacy and how that can be important. And I certainly recognize there are many worthy causes to advocate for that Davidson students do, and I truly admire that. But that was a moment that I think I was like, oh, I could do this, and got curious about it.
Yeah. So, Robin, walk us through, you talked a little bit about being in law school and how vastly different that was from being at Davidson. You went from the small class sizes to class of 100. While you were going through your law career, walk me through some of the peaks and valleys that you were like, wow, like I really love it in law. And then what were some of those things where you're like, man, I don't really know if this is for me?
Yeah. I think I loved the litigation part. And I mentioned earlier, it's like every case is a new story, and you get to
Mm,
go deeply into the story and you get to interview, well, take depositions of all of the people and put together how you're going to present it to the jury. And then, after months and months of work, you have a trial. Well, sometimes you don't have a trial, you'll settle it out of court. But those moments in the courtroom where you get to go and tell your story are really exciting. And I loved that part of it. I think that as many people learn, the billable hours is very tiring, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of expectations on you um, to bill for the firm, and it's just part of the process. And I think that that you can learn to do well with that, but it also can be a struggle and feel like a burden sometimes to count your time in increments of 6 minutes, is stressful. And that is tied to your ability to be promoted and things like that. You have to embrace that. And there are other types of law. So I did spend some time working at the city of Tampa. And in that case, you're not billing, you're just a full-time employee of the government. And those cases were extremely interesting. I mean, anything to do with constitutional law, civil rights, employment, like there's so many interesting cases. I got to argue an appeal at the appellate court, and that was really exciting. So I think it was just a push and pull of like, I love this, and you want to be in it all the time. You're constantly thinking
Yeah.
about it, but it can be hard to find balance and turn that off when you're really driven because law is very much a competitive activity if you're a litigator. And so you have to be the most prepared, the the best, you're always trying to be better. And while that is exciting, if you're an ambitious and driven person, it can eventually catch up with you. And I think, you know, we're all figuring out how to find more balance in our lives. And I think that's where I was as well.
Talk to me about what success looked like for you in that season of your life. I mean, we all have a different definition of what success looks like in our professional careers and our holistic careers, our lives. But what was success for you in that season?
I think in that season of life, I was still thinking of it in terms of a very linear path. Like,
Mm,
first you go to college, then you go to graduate school, then you go to the big law firm, and then you are, trying to make partner. Like, it's a very step process. And I
yeah,
don't think I realized until later on how many more options there are and ways to define success. And so I think sometimes it's easy to, especially for Davidson students, I would think, who are very driven and very ambitious, to always be looking for the next achievement. But
yeah.
you can get to a point in life where there's always going to be another achievement. Like, when are you going to be at the top of the mountain? When can you
Mm.
relax and be satisfied? And I think that that has to come from other places sometimes.
Was there a defining moment when you knew you couldn't ignore the feeling that you wanted to have that balance, or you wanted to explore something beyond being in the courtroom? Like, what did that moment look like for you?
So for me, that moment was this feeling that if I didn't take an opportunity to step away and do something else, I was going to miss a chance.
Yeah,
And I think that's really what it was. Like, I found this opportunity at the camp, and I should say I actually applied for one role that didn't work out, but then shortly thereafter they contacted me to saying, we actually have this other job that would be so great for you. And so it turned out that that was the right position for me and the right time. But I think I just had this feeling of like, I really want to do this. And if I don't do it, I'm
yeah,
going to regret it, right? And people do step away from their law careers to go into government or, do other things like politics and whatnot. And so I thought,
yeah,
okay, well, this might just be a 3-year role for me where I'm working with the camp and doing the centennial planning and campaign. And then perhaps after
yeah,
that, I'll go back to practicing law. And I think that sometimes we forget that once you are an attorney, you always are one as long as you keep your license up. And so there
yeah.
are times when you might just want to do another opportunity, but then there are ways to transition back in if you want to.
Now, Robin, leaving a career like law isn't a small decision at all. And I'm certain that that had to come with some fears or questions. And how did you navigate that? I mean, when you think about being on the cusp of a career pivot, that can bring up a lot of questions, doubts, even all of the things. Like, walk through what type of things you had to combat to fully make that decision.
Yes. So I went through this whole discernment process, and if you are a person like this, you will relate. Like I had pro con lists. I reached out
Yeah.
to people who I knew had made the transition from law to nonprofit. I had some lunches and some coffees with some folks. I tried to figure out how that transition could go, and I talked to my friends. Hello, all of you. I talked about earlier. I had lots of phone calls with them to try to discern this, talk to my family about it. And it really was a struggle because I think in professional fields like law or medicine or other things, I think you can really make that your identity. And so it feels really scary to step away from that. And you also feel like you have a lot of sunk costs. Like, well, I went to
Hmm.
law school for 3 years and I invested all this time and money into it. And I had student loans, as many people do. And so I had been really in a process of trying to pay those off so I would have some more flexibility about what I wanted to do. That was part of it as well that I think should be mentioned because there are a lot of things to think about in making a big transition like this. Uh,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you what really sealed it for me. Like after all of this struggle and all of this back and forth and the pro cons and whatnot, one day I just had this thought, and I don't know, it could have been just a God moment, but it was, what would you do if you knew you could not fail?
Whew.
And I realized that all these cons on my list were about fear. It was about something not working out or, um, you know, not being able to transition back or whatever. And then, so I thought, okay, well, let me think about it like this. If both options are going to work out, which one do I really, in my heart, want to do? And I
Mm,
really wanted to go and work for Camp Marywood. And that's truly what I wanted to do. And as soon as I had that realization, I was at peace and I didn't
mm,
deliberate anymore and I wasn't going back and forth. I just felt like that was it. And it was just
yeah.
like this moment of calm. And I hope that doesn't sound cheesy or like some kind of
No.
motivational speaker, but that is really how it happened. That as soon as I had that realization, I just felt completely calm. And then it was just putting the pieces in place for the move.
How did you translate your legal background into the work that you're doing now? I get the pleasure of coaching so many Davidson alums in their own career pivots, and we talk about those transitional skills, right? To where, you can
Yes.
use the skills you learn in this season of your life and truly make an impact in the next season of your life. What skills carried over from the courtroom in ways that you didn't expect at Camp Marywood?
So I think the transition from law to development and fundraising is a very natural one because you
Mm,
are a persuasive advocate in both roles. Instead of persuading the jury or persuading donors to support your causes. So the that part of it was a very natural switch. Um, I think a strong writing background is highly valued. I think the people skills, the ability to speak to anyone about pretty much any topic and try to understand their motivations is very similar to what you do in the law when you're meeting with clients and witnesses and everything. And I also think that people from a legal background have the ability to take something complex and break it into steps and figure out the path forward of how you're going to accomplish the goal. Because,
yeah,
you're constantly doing that. You're looking toward a trial, but then you've got to break it down into its pieces. And so I think people who are strong writers, who are analytical thinkers, and have great people skills can easily translate those into another career.
yeah. What would you say to someone who's on the call tonight or another alum who feels like they're too far into their industry to pivot? Like, what would you say about the idea that no experience is wasted? Someone who's been working in their field for 20, 25, 30 years and they're like, I'm too deep to even think about pivoting.
So there's this concept that I really love that was coined by Scott Adams, and it's called the talent stack. And
Mm,
Scott's argument in his book, which is something like How to Fail at Everything and Still Win Big, He's the guy who created the Dilbert comic and has written a number of books. But anyway, he came up with this idea of talent stack, and it's that you don't, very few people are going to be the very best at the thing that they do. But a lot of people are going to be pretty good at three or four things that are unique to them and have like interesting overlaps. And so I think
Mm,
that you can consider what your talent stack might be. What unique combination of experiences do you have? And for me, it was like I had this background at Camp Marywood, so I understood the sort of legends around it and the people who were involved. And I had this law background, and I was a strong writer, and I was interested in nonprofits and fundraising and working with younger people. So just having that, like going deep with yourself about what your talents are, I think
yeah.
is a really huge part of the process. And a couple of the questions I see in the chat that are about what would you share with younger people, or how would you counsel them? I think I would counsel them to think about their own talent stack and what makes them unique. And
Mm,
then also just being very clear on what your values are. I think it's really easy to get caught up in ambition and trying to achieve, but there comes a time when if you want your life to be aligned with your values, you have to know what those are and be honest
mm,
about them. And so I would just say that discernment process is important.
absolutely. Now that you're in a completely different environment, what does purpose feel like for you today compared to earlier in your career?
I mean, I think that I have moved away from that desire to be winning, and
Mhm.
that being the satisfaction, and moved more into watching how individuals are growing and
Yeah,
learning. And we talk a lot at camp about realizing that you matter. And these children deeply need to know that they matter in the world, that they
yeah.
are seen and valued for who they are and what they're going to contribute. And so being part of that and watching them work toward that is extremely rewarding. And I'm also really proud to be a steward of this great institution that came about before my lifetime and will continue on after my lifetime. And for this moment, as it's part of my responsibility to take care of it and ensure its success. And that goes to the property as well as the relationships with all of the people. And it's just a great honor to be part of that.
Thank you, Robin. If you could sit down with your Davidson self today, I'm talking about that girl at Madonna Rama, call her to the forefront. What would you tell her about choosing a path, redefining success, and trusting the journey?
Yeah. Well, besides talking about her fashion sense, which we would certainly have to address, I think that I would tell her that she should get clear on her values early and not be distracted by all the noise out there, or external validation and measures of success, but really to look at what's important to her. Because I think I knew back then. I
Yeah,
think at that time at Davidson, I was the person I am now. And those things that mattered to me, like living close to nature and challenging yourself, like having opportunities to push yourself to your limits, those things haven't changed. They were there. So getting clear on your values, the path doesn't have to be linear. There are lots of twists and turns along the way. And always be learning. Like that's a thing I do now. I'm always looking for new things to learn. I'm trying to get my Blue Ridge Naturalist certification. So I'm learning all about plants and studying nature as much as I can, or just challenging yourself to take courses, go to lectures, read books, all of that. I think Davidson folks are really good at that. And then I think just to say yes a lot. Like when opportunities come your
mm,
way, whether or not you actually are confident that you can do it, you should say yes, because a lot of the things that I had the chance to do were just things that I wasn't really sure I could do, but I had that confidence from doing the hard things as a child and all the outdoor challenges that I said, okay, well, I'm just going to do it and we'll see what happens. But it works out. And that's really how you can advance.
Robin, I'm just so grateful for you to share just all of the twists and turns that your journey has taken. I think when we are transparent about our own journeys, we don't realize how it helps us and others in their journeys as well. We have gotten some amazing questions in the chat and in the bank, and we want to make sure that we give other alums the opportunity to ask their questions and get their questions answered. You touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to bring it back to the forefront here. Kirk Willingham asked, you have the opportunity to counsel smart young women now. How do you translate your wonderful love of learning and the twists of your life journey to young people?
Well, I find at camp there are often moments that you can work some of that in. It's different from school. I'm not really speaking at them like a teacher, but there are a lot of moments that we just happen to run into each other. And in chatting with them informally, just looking for ways to compliment them on what they're doing well and reminding them that they're special, they're unique, they have these talents. And I think the moments just come up if you're looking for
Mm,
them. And so I have to challenge myself to, be out there and mingling with everybody and chatting because I think both the counselors and the campers are looking for that. They're grappling with a lot of things. And so it's wonderful to
yeah,
have those moments to talk about values and talk about how unique and special they each are.
yeah, yeah. Robin, we have a question. John Mason, class of 24. He says, I grew up going to camp, I hope I'm not butchering this name, Camp Mondamin on Lake Summit near Hendersonville and was a program manager for 3 years there during my summers at Davidson. Mondamin was founded in 1922 and has struggled at times to adapt to the real world in terms of recruiting summer counselors, having a social media presence, and branching out outside of their family-based network. How have you helped Mary Wood adapt and stay connected in the digital age, especially as a nonprofit? Things are definitely different than they were 100 years ago.
That's such a cool question. Thank you, John. And so much respect for Camp Mondamin. I mean, that is one of the premier boys camps. Great history. Their former director, Chief Bell, was a pioneer in the paddling world and explored a lot of these North Carolina rivers. So much respect for the Bells. And I think that, we were founded around the same era. Marywood went through a challenging time in the late 1970s when the family, most of summer camps are privately owned by families, and as was Marywood up until the late 70s. And at the time, the economy was really difficult. There were a lot of challenges to running summer camps, and so the alumni got together and asked the directors if they could purchase it. And so they formed a nonprofit foundation and purchased the camp in the late 1970s. And I think that that was a really key moment in Marywood's history because people had to come together. And the folks, I mean, amazing gratitude for the folks who were involved in that moment and creating the early foundation because they worked so hard. They went through boxes of records. They contacted everybody they could who was connected to Marywood to, raise money and get organized. And um, there was a professor from Swanee who was the first director and stepped in to handle that, the first director of the foundation. So, yes, having that network of alumni who support camp is absolutely critical and has been a game changer. And even most recently in COVID, it was a game changer because we were not able to operate for a summer. And so the Marywood families either donated their tuition or made, wonderfully generous gifts. And we were able to weather that period of time when we weren't able to run our normal session. So you do point out the challenges, which are recruiting summer counselors. I mean, I would say that is one of our biggest challenges right now. We have so many campers, but we have to get those college students to come back, and they have so many opportunities now to do internships and go abroad and do lots of things. And I think there's a lot of pressure on them. They're worried about the job market. They're worried about what's next, and so they want to get these internships. And so we help them see how a job title at camp can translate on your resume into certain skills. So that they can feel comfortable about taking those jobs in the summer and know that they're leading, they're managing, they're doing all of these creative pursuits. And I think those are skills employers are looking for if it is framed correctly.
Hmm.
Your other
Hmm.
question was about the digital age. And this is a bit of a struggle because we are both unplugged during the summer. So for 15 years, Marywood has been technology free for campers in the summer and also counselors. None of them bring their phones. They're not in the cabins. Counselors even agree to keep their phones in the office and they only have access to them on their days off. And that has completely changed our camp culture from what is going on, in the real world with phones and the digital media. But at the same time, as a business, you must be present on social media and you must be communicating. So we really work hard to strike that balance, and it is a fine line because we are um, both separate from the internet in the summer, but also sharing some photos out. So our alumni and families are seeing them on social media, just because it is the way people communicate and know about us. And I think it's fun. I think it helps with our fundraising as well because our alumni see what's going on at camp. Yeah.
We have another good question from the chat. This is a very good question bank here. Someone asks, you mentioned staying grounded in core values. How do you maintain that mission-driven feeling when dealing with the unglamorous side of camp, like logistics, HR, or plumbing?
This person knows camp. Like the fact that you asked about plumbing, I'm like, she knows or he knows. Um, yes, it is unglamorous at times, but I mean the moments that are so rewarding really are incredibly joy-giving and fulfilling. And so I think that is what gets you through. Like when you have a breakthrough moment with a camper and all of a sudden you can tell that she is feeling confident and boosted up, or a counselor is like handling something so beautifully just the way you train them. That's really
Mhm.
fulfilling. And so it makes the moments that the toilets are backing up or there's something going on, it just gets you through. Like there's always going to be something happening at camp. That's just kind of camp. But you know, like that was not new to me from my legal background either, because legal is all about like people have a problem that's so big that they are hiring somebody else to handle it for them. So,
Mhm.
you're used to taking on big problems and you're like, we're gonna get through this. Like this will get fixed. The ovens will
Yeah.
work. Like the laundry will get done. Because you're taking care of all these children and entertaining them and that, but you're also feeding them, doing their
Yeah.
laundry and their healthcare. So there's a lot of different aspects to it, and things come up on a daily basis. So you just have to believe that you're going to get through it. It's going to be okay.
Another great question. Many people see camp as a seasonal escape. What is the most rigorous part of your job that would surprise people who only see the campfire side of your work? Great question.
That's a great question. So I explain it to people as I see my job as having like four distinct parts. There's running the summer camp. There is the foundation piece, which is we have a board of trustees, we have fundraising. The governance piece is happening throughout the year. We also have a huge alumni network, and part of stewarding these relationships is being involved in people's lives. And when there are celebrations or moments of sadness and loss, like we are there for people. We're celebrating new babies. We're sometimes attending
Mhm.
funerals and sending lots of condolence notes and things like that. So taking care of the alumni network is a huge piece. And then we also own 400 acres of land, half of which is forest and half of which has 80 buildings of varying ages going all the way back to the 1920s. So there's also the land stewardship piece. And I've learned a lot over the last few years about forestry management and infrastructure. And I should say, I mean, I do this in partnership with my husband, who is amazing and works so, so hard, and we do it together. But it's a fascinating job, and it's really interesting and challenges my brain all the time, which is cool.
Robin, Betsy Rothschild, class of 88, asked, Robin, did you feel pressure from family or friends who said, why are you leaving a good career law? job and imply that camp is not a real job.
Betsy, you are wise. Yes, that was a big issue, actually. I mean, I'll be real. My parents were not happy with the decision at
Mm,
first. They were very concerned. Um, and I remember them saying, like, but you can't go back to camp because you're a lawyer. And I'm like, I know, but it's really fundraising and it's this national campaign and all, and but they just couldn't like wrap their brains around it. And I understand. I mean, I feel for them because they had sacrificed for my education and to help me get to where they felt like was, a place where I was going to be financially secure and have this wonderful career and everything. And so it took them some time to get on board with the decision. But like I was saying, once I felt that peace about it, I
mm,
realized that I was going to be fine and I was okay with it and I needed to do this. And
mm.
a few months later, they came up to visit me and all was well. And they now see how, I mean, they know it's how I met my husband and they adore him. So they're very happy about that. And they just see how much it's brought to my life. But that was a hurdle we had to get through. Yes.
Wow. Another great question. And let me just preface this. If we are not able to get to your question, don't worry. We're going to make sure that we can get these questions over to Robin. These, oh my gosh, the questions are amazing. As a lawyer, you're trained to mitigate risk. How did that mindset help or hinder you when taking the personal risk or leaving a stable legal career?
Yes, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think lawyers are always looking for the potential problem on the horizon, right? It's like a sort of
Right.
obsession that we have. So that can be stressful at times. I mean, I think I was overanalyzing it so much, and I eventually had to just um, okay, this is a good way to say this. Like I had to recognize where my intuition was going to come in and trusting my gut. And that's not my natural habitat. Like I like to be very
Yeah.
analytical. And I think over time and throughout this journey, I have learned more about how to tap into the intuition side. And it really is a special kind of intelligence that you should not ignore. And you have to learn to balance both. Like it's wonderful to be analytical, but there is a role for emotion and truth and intuition.
Yeah. Courtrooms and summer camps are both high pressure environments, though for different reasons. How does your litigation brain handle an immediate crisis at camp compared to a crisis in a case?
Oh gosh. Well, they can be similar and different. I mean, if it's a sort of a logistical thing, there's a problem with the van or something with equipment. I mean, you got to break it down and just kind of put steps together of how you're going to address it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, in litigation, I guess there are constantly unexpected things cropping up. I mean, you can be in the middle of the trial and you took that witness's deposition and you've read everything and they get on the stand and they just say something completely like out there. And then you have to change your argument, again, right before. So you can plan, but then things will go wrong. And I think just accepting that and having contingency plans and having people who are well trained is extremely helpful. I mean, you all know from that any effort like this is not done by two people. This is a team effort, and so we have to hire good people and trust them, like train them well and trust them to do their work. And I think litigation is like that too. You have a team of people supporting you um, and camp, we have a whole team of folks who each have important roles and they all rise to the challenge. It's great.
How do you explain the value of camp skills or soft skills to people who still view the legal corporate world as the only place for serious work?
Wow, that is a really good question. I mean, soft skills are extremely valuable in the legal world because a lot of the time you are negotiating. Not that
Yeah.
many cases actually go to trial, as you all know. And so a lot of the time you are in conversation with opposing counsel with your clients, and you're trying to work things out and you're trying to figure out where there's common ground and not fan the flame so that it's getting worse. Like you're trying to bring things to a resolution. So I think
Right.
the soft skills are very important, and that starts at a young age. I mean, and I think we saw this a little bit with COVID when people were separated and now they're back together again, that um, kids learning to get along and resolve conflict and how to talk to each other and talk about it is a skill that you have to work on and develop over time. So I think camp is great for putting you in the path of people who are different from you. So you have to learn how to talk to other people and how people behave when they're uncomfortable, because everybody's great on their good days, but then when you're having a bad day or you're struggling, you might not be responding at your best. And so how do you handle
Yeah.
that? And camp is a great place to practice these things, and it's okay to when they're kids, they're learning, so everything's a learning experience, and we don't always handle it the best way, but then we talk about it afterward and how you should have handled it, and so everybody's learning. And I think that's what's going to set you up, is just practicing those skills and then being ready for wherever you take them in life.
Um, This is going to be our last question of the night, but is there anything you actually miss about the courtroom? And conversely, what is one thing you will definitely never miss now that you're at the campfire?
Such an awesome question. Well, so I still get to use my legal skills occasionally, and I actually did take the North Carolina bar in 2018 after I'd been here for 3 years, just because I didn't want to lose that, and the future is uncertain, right? And we don't know what's going to happen. So I
Right.
did do that, and there have been many ways that that has been useful. Involved with a group of people who are working on land use and zoning issues in Cashers. And of course, development is growing at a huge rate. And so I've been able to work with this group, and there's some attorneys and some other local volunteers, and we collaborate with the county and talk to landowners and stuff about zoning issues. So I still get to do that. And then there are all kinds of legal issues that come up related to camp. And I am not camp's lawyer, like that is a very clear line that we have, but still it helps to understand real property questions and employment law questions and things like that. So I just think all knowledge is valuable. I mean, that's kind of the premise of our liberal arts education, I think, too. So you just find ways to use it. But the question was really, is there anything I miss? And I would say I do miss the courtroom sometimes, especially if you're watching it on TV and I just feel like I want to object. And I'm like, you can't ask that question. And then my husband gets annoyed because he's like, it's not real, it's just TV. So, but I still kind of miss that. And then things I don't miss, I mean, I'll be honest, timesheets, like it was just a real challenge. I still once in a while have a nightmare where I wake up and think that my I've opened up that timekeeping software and it's just all zeros. Like I just never
Oh
clocked
my
out
goodness.
for the whole year. And I'm like, how am I going to recreate this year of time? So I don't know. I think that's just a challenge. Yeah.
Robin, I'm so super proud of you for choosing yourself. I'm proud of you for honoring the piece of yourself that said, you know what? I think I want to pivot, even despite, maybe some family or friends suggestions. You chose yourself. And so I'm thankful for you sharing these gems. I'm hoping that someone on the call today can choose themselves as well and honor their own pivot. We're so grateful for your gems. We're so grateful for you being a part of the Wildcat community. Um, Judith, we're going to bring you back on, but we're just so very grateful to have you. The Wildcat community is lucky because you're a part of it. So thank you for tonight.
Grateful for you all and all my Davidson friends and colleagues out there. It's great to see you all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes. And again, thank you, Robin. Thank you, Erica. Appreciate both of you taking us on this journey through this conversation. Robin, thank you for being so vulnerable and honest and sharing your stories. Um, pre Davidson, Davidson, and post Davidson. um, really, I'm I'm hoping I'm speaking for everyone on the call accurately when I share that we gain so much from listening from you. It's always helpful to hear other stories. And so we really appreciate you being willing to share yours with us tonight. Um, a follow-up email will be sent in the next couple of days to everyone who registered for the class. In that will be a brief survey. We'll have Robin's contact information, a link to the camp, and some other fun tidbits in that email, as well as some information around the back to school class series and the chat with the cat. Um, Also know that tonight's event was recorded, and so we will also mention how you can access that recording. It'll be available on the website. Just give it a couple days, and then certainly encourage anyone to either listen to this or the tidbits again that you think might be helpful, or certainly to share the link with others who you think might benefit or want to hear the program as well. We're happy for anyone and everyone to take advantage of learning all the great things that we did tonight. And again, we thank everyone for joining us this evening. We hope that you all enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks everyone, and go Cats.
Thank
Go
you.
cats.
Go cats.